Purim on the Potomac. That actually was a headline article of several that came out of Israel, out of mainstream media in Israel. They used that as a headline because here's what happened. In March of 2015, Benjamin Netanyahu, now I'm going to use Old Testament terms and call him the king of Israel. Now we know he's not a king, he's prime minister, but just think of the Old Testament because it's going to connect to something in the Old Testament that he brought up. So the king of Israel comes before Congress, which is the lawmaking body of the most powerful, the most prolifically influential, the wealthiest nation, watch this, not of our lifetime, that the planet has ever known, called the United States of America. There's never been a more influential, powerful militarily and economic engine than the United States of America. Now, we may lose all that tomorrow, but I'm just saying, up until now, that's who we are. The King of Israel, the returned Israel, a prophecy, a prophetic return. He comes before one of the three branches. He comes before the legislative body of that prolifically powerful, unbelievable nation in early March of 2015, on the eve of the celebration of Purim. Now, I know your people know what that is, but for the sake of newer people coming in, I'll explain that very quickly. But on the eve of that, he begs Congress to stop something, and I'll explain what that is. But as you know, and as your audience knows, Purim comes from the book of Esther, where Haman had plotted, I'm going to make this quick, Haman had plotted to destroy the Jews because of Mordecai and his hatred for Mordecai and all that. Of course, Esther, who's a Jewish queen, married to the Persian king. The Persian king doesn't know she's Jewish at the time, but you know that whole story. So Hadassah, whose Persian name is Esther. So Haman, this wicked Persian who desires for all of the Jews to be gone, who desires that there's never an Israel again, who desires to kill, exterminate all the Jews. He's so filled with hatred for the Jews. He under false pretenses and some deception and some misalignment of truth, he engages the king and convinces the king to sign a compact to allow him to destroy the Jews. Because he convinces the king that the Jews are out to get him, the Jews are out to steal the empire, the Jews are out to overthrow him. So the king says, yeah, you take care of it for me. Just kill them all, I don't care. Just get rid of them. So they sign a compact. Now, we know the rest of that story in the book of Esther. Esther finally relents. Mordecai goes, says, please go. She says, I can't go before him. He'll kill me. And then he says, but what if you've been raised up for such a time as this? Remember, she says, well, I will go, and if I die, I die. So she lays her life down for her people. She goes in before the king. This king, once he hears the whole truth and realizes who his wife, who he adores, really is, and how she's connected, he then calls in Haman, turns the tables, hangs Haman on his own gallows, and all the enemies of Israel. You remember, that's all in the book of Esther. Well, Purim, as you and your audience knows, represents the lots that were cast to determine the date of the signing of that contract, the date of the death of the Jews. But of course, the tables were turned. Interesting, that whole book, nowhere in the book of Esther does it mention the name of God. But, people, when they hear that, they're shocked, because they think it's just filled with that. But the whole story is so godly, and it's so filled with God. And so, I mean, even Esther is even almost a type of Christ. I mean, laying down her life for her people, and it's just, and she's there secretly until she exposes who she really is, and then she lays her life down. I mean, the whole thing is amazing, and because of it, the Jews are saved, and the Persian destroyers are destroyed. The casting of the Purim. To this day, as you know, the Orthodox will celebrate Purim as this big celebration of how God blessed and saved the Jews through Esther and protected them from the enemies that would kill them. All right. But the enemies were the Persians. Until 1935, all of the maps on the globe and in school textbooks listed a certain area of the world as Persia. Until 1935. It was called Persia. It's now modern-day Iran. Okay? On March, I think it was the 3rd or the 4th, he comes to Congress. The king of Israel comes to the most powerful nation the planet has ever known, because the president, at the time Barack Obama, the president of that nation, is in public contract. He's getting ready to sign a nuclear deal. With who? Let's just call them what they are, Persia. He's getting ready to sign a compact with Persia, which will effectively, now he denied it, but Netanyahu said otherwise, a lot of experts said otherwise, and now we're on the other side of it in a new administration who has exposed that they were all right, that the compact was effectively going to give Iran more nuclear capability. Now again, Obama denied that. But the bottom line is, Netanyahu begs Congress, please don't let this happen, please don't let this happen. He says, we're on the eve of Purim. And then he tells the story to Congress, what I just told. And some of them probably didn't even know that.
That's right.
And he's saying that they're our most ancient enemies. He said, we're not enemies of them, but they're enemies of us. We don't mean them any harm, but they're trying to kill us. They always have. 2,600 years ago, through Haman. And this is what we're celebrating. And just tomorrow, we're going to start celebrating the fact that it didn't happen. But now you guys are getting ready to hand them the ball again. And they're already saying, their Ayatollahs are saying, their president, I'm in a bad job, is what I call him. These guys, they were saying, if we ever get nukes, if we ever get the capability, first thing we're going to do is wipe Israel off the map. We're going to drive the Jews into this. See, they're publicly saying this in the media, on television. And Netanyahu comes and he says, please, 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 please don't do this. Well, because Obama couldn't get the congressional support he needed to make it legal through Congress, it infuriated Obama and his administration. They lashed out against Netanyahu for coming and visiting Congress. They trashed him. Even a curse word was attached to it in the media. And people were saying, you just cursed the president, the prime minister of Israel? Mm-hmm. It was bad. But here's the freaky thing that a lot of people don't know. Obama had already said that he was going to sign that deal anyway, and he could circumvent Congress because some kind of executive power gave him the authority to do this. It wasn't like a full-blown treaty. It was just some deal he was going to make. Obama was going to do it in late March, but at the last moment, he delayed it for a week or two. He literally signed the contract on the 13th of Nisan, which is in the Bible, in the book of Esther, the day that Haman signed the contract with the king to kill all the Jews. Obama literally changed the day of the signing of the Iran nuclear deal to the day that Haman signed the contract.
Like this video? Be sure to like and subscribe. Watch the full episode of Shabbat Night Live this Friday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. See you then.